Hey y'all, thanks for tuning in to another episode. This is Just Give Me Something New, whatever that looks like. And so I thought as we were rounding out the end of 2023 and heading into a new year, that we would do these last 3 weeks in succession to get us ready for the start of that new year. Now, I'm not one to do New Year's resolutions and these type of things, but I do realize that there is some benefit in making sure that we end out something so that we can start something new. And so this week we're going to be talking about taking inventory. And then next week, we're going to look at some best of episodes from this year, from 2023. And then on the last week before we go into the new year, we're going to talk about picking that word of the year and assessing your situation so that you know what word you land on and have a focus area for your word of the year, because that's something that has truly worked for me. I'm going to be sharing my word of the year for the last couple of years with you guys and how I navigated that process. So that's how we're going to end out the year. But for this week, we're going to talk about taking inventory. And if we want something new to happen, we have to take inventory of what we've been doing and get real with what's been happening with what we've been doing, what we need to continue from what we've been doing, and what we need to let go of from what we've been doing because it's just not really serving us. So why do we take inventory? Well, much like if you're in the retail industry or you know anything about the retail industry, when they are taking inventory, they're looking at what products have sold well and what do we need to ramp up our order for because we have more demand than we've had supply for this thing, and we really need to make sure that we're continuing to provide this for the needs of the people who come into our store. Another thing that happens when we take inventory is looking at the things that really didn't sell so well or didn't go so well for the store and deciding what to do with those leftovers and what to make sure that we're not doing in the upcoming seasons to end up with that same product left over at the end. And then there really is do we need to do some more marketing? So it's that logistics piece. Like we're checking for inventory of how did what we did before work for us and how might it have worked against us, and we need to alter it or change it. So when we're taking inventory of ourselves and our lives and our past year, we're thinking about what things did we do a whole bunch of that really just had us on the hamster wheel and really just had us spinning our wheels trying to fit a square peg into a round hole and not really receive any results from the end of that. We're looking at what things did we enter into our lives that served us well, and what do we need to focus on to ramp those things up and to continue doing those things for the betterment of ourselves. And we're looking at what might we need to act on. So what are some things that we just kind of left in the muddy waters of our brain and in our spirit and continue to sift through that we could have just acted on, gotten rid of, done something about, and made our situations better. And so I want to start with a piece of scripture for this one because I just find this scripture amazing when it comes to taking inventory. Because I think sometimes when we're looking at our lives, we think, I want this thing to change, but do I really want what happens as a result of that change? You know, I relate a lot of things to relationships, but I want my relational situation to change. But when I sit with it, I know that I can't change this person. Nothing's going to change about this relationship if I can't change them, which I've sat with and know that I can't. And so, am I willing to let go of this relationship and deal with what happens as a result of that? And I think sometimes we want the aftermath of that, but we don't really want to deal with what happens in the process of getting to it. So we don't really want what it takes to be well. We just want to be well. And when we think about being well, if we know that it requires something to be well, and we're not willing to do that thing that it requires, then is our wellness really that important to us? And when you look in the scripture at John 5:6, this one just sticks out to me so much. It says, when Jesus saw him lying there and already knew his condition, meaning that he already knew what was wrong with him. He already knew what miracle he needed to be healed. And he already knew what healing would look like if that miracle was performed, right? So he already knew the man's condition, but he said to him, do you want to be made well? So it wasn't even just, do you want to be well? Do you want to be made well? And sometimes when we look at our situations, we want to be well, but we don't want to go through the thing that's going to really just, for the lack of a better word, suck to get us to our wellness. And when I think about that last relationship that I was in, I wanted to be in a space where I was no longer spinning my wheels and feeling the way that I had been feeling for about a year. Because if I'm being honest, there were 6 months that were good, but there was a year that was just like me fighting myself to stay. And I wanted to be well. I wanted to be in a situation where I was well, but being made well, like that process of refinement and sifting and all of the things that I would have had to do to get there, plus leaving the person that I had, plans with, I'm not really sure that I wanted that part. And it wasn't until I felt like my hand was forced, until it was like, you either get this or you get this, that I was like, oh, well, I really want this. Like, I really want what God has for me. So if I have to get rid of this to have that, then, well, my hand is kind of forced because that's the only option here. It wasn't until then that the sifting and refinement was given space to happen. And so you have to ask yourself that question at the end of this year, right now, today. Do you want to be made well? Do you want your situation to be different? And if your answer is yes, are you ready for that refinement and sifting process that it requires for you to be made well? And as somebody who has answered that question and who has gone through the hard process of, yes, I do, even though, ouch, I don't, I promise you your answer is always yes. Like, yes, I want to be made well. But when you're thinking about God stepping in, he wants to, but he's not going to do it until you're ready for him to mold, shape, and grow you. And so if you want that other thing, but you don't actually want to be made well, then be prepared to continue for another year to sit in that thing. And that's not me being harsh. It's me being real with you. If nothing changes, then nothing changes. And oftentimes we want to sit in our self-delusion that all of these things have happened to us. And so therefore we're waiting for the world around us to change in order for the situation to change. Well, girlfriend and boyfriend, if there are guys listening, that is not the way that life works. Yes, this thing might have happened to you, but it is up to you now at this point, sitting in the mess and the muddle of it, to pull up your bootstraps and say, no more will I continue to live in this space. And if that is your answer, and if that is what you want, then the sifting can take place and you will have a support system through it, but it's not going to be all rainbows and butterflies. I can promise you that my tears have soaked more pillows, and my pillows are probably like, girl, can you stop? Can you stop crying now? But at the end of that process, I came to a space where I was like, oh, this is what he meant when he said, if you want to be made well, I can make you well. So when we're taking inventory, the first thing we really have to do is decide that you want to be made well and know that it is a process. So if you haven't made that decision, I encourage you today to do so, because I'm telling you right now, your life was not meant for you to arduously push through and trudge through the trenches every single day. Your body cannot sustain that type of behavior. Your body cannot sustain that type of stress and trauma. You will start to become ill as a result of it, because your body was not intended or created for you to continue to push through hell every single day. But when you decide that you want to be made well, and you decide that that wellness is what you're willing to get, regardless of what it takes, then you allow space for God to come in, for your support system to help you, and for you to give yourself the room to replace dealing with the trauma and dealing with the stress and that feeling of overwhelm with getting yourself to a space where you no longer are there anymore. Whether it's intellectualizing some of the information, whether it's journaling, whether it's and I'm naming these things because they work, whether it's doing meditation, whether it's doing yoga to get the trauma out of your body, whether it's praying incessantly on your knees and your face, praying. I can't tell you how many times I had an out of body experience just laying on the ground in prayer and just saying, God, I can't anymore. And I know you can and will. So I need you to make me well. And there was a lot of loss in that wellness, right? He took a lot of things, right? But he knew that with those things, I couldn't get to a place of wellness. A lot of boundaries were set inside of that space. And it felt uncomfortable. It was weird. It still is weird sometimes. But to have those connections with the same people was just going to leave me in the same hole. So I had to get real with myself that there were things that were ailing me and that they were self-inflicted wounds. And that it wasn't until I said, I want to be made well and I'm willing to get rid of anything to make that happen, that it actually started to come to fruition. So if you want to be made well, you have to decide that you do and that you know that it is work. Now, there's something that I want you to hold on to through the rest of this podcast, and that is when you take inventory of your life, you're not just looking for the bad things. You're not reprimanding yourself. You're not saying, well, you sucked at this and you failed at this and this isn't good for you. You have to look at those things. Yes, you have to take inventory of the things that need to be altered. You have to take inventory of the things that need to be abandoned. Absolutely. But you also have to pay attention to the things that went well. And I heard this word, and it's a Swedish word, and the word is fika. And this word is, it's not my word of the year, but it is probably the underlying one, because it is a moment to slow down and appreciate the good things. So when we tend to take inventory, what we do to ourselves is we're like, okay, I'm going to filter. Our brain goes to the negative. That's just the way our brains work. It looks for the problem so we can develop a solution so we can move past it. And oftentimes it feels comfortable to sit in the negative because that's the space that we've been in for quite some time. So we're comfortable there. We're used to being there. But if you don't take a moment for your fika, if you don't stop and pause for your fika to look at the things that went well and appreciate them, then you can't take those strategies into your next. So I have to sit and say, okay, what are some things that I did really well? You know, and I did that whenever I was ending that relationship. I was like, perhaps this relationship wasn't the relationship for me. Perhaps this person wasn't the person for me. But what are some things that I did really well in that space that I want to make sure that I keep doing? And one of those things was I showed up. I showed up when he was going through some of the really hard parts of his life. I showed up. It wasn't enough for him because he needed me to show up more, but I was proud of myself for showing up. Now, I took that good thing and I said, you know what? When I go into another space, if I put my name on something, girlfriend, a title at work, whatever it is, I'm going to show up. This podcast, I'm going to show up. It doesn't matter how many people are listening. Every week on a Monday, I'm going to show up. And I also was able to look inside of that and decide some things I need to alter. So there were two things. One was don't keep showing up for someone else if you're not showing up for yourself in that same capacity. So when you say you're going to show up for Carrie Nicole too. So that was the first thing. Like you can't just keep showing up for other people without showing up for yourself. And the second thing was stop showing up for people who are only willing to be in your life to take from you. So I had to tell myself, you're showing up for the wrong people, girlfriend, but you're showing up good. So let's stop showing up for the wrong people so that the way you show up can be appreciated. So when you're thinking about your fika, you're thinking about, I'm going to stop and pause and I'm going to appreciate the things that I did so well. I'm going to hold on to those things. And that is part of my inventory because I'm going to take that into the next phase. And there might be some things that moment reveals to me about some other things that I need to do differently. So when you're taking your inventory, you're really thinking about, don't filter everything through a negative lens. Filter through the positive too. Like, if this thing needs to stop happening, what did it teach me about my maneuvers for the next? If this thing needs to cease right now because it's been killing me inside, what has it showed me about my behaviors and myself that I need to be aware of when I go into my next? If this thing was really, really good and I don't need to adapt it at all, I'm writing that down to keep doing it because I know that it's me and it works for me, right? So take a moment to slow down, take your fika, appreciate the good things while you're taking inventory because it ain't all bad. Everything isn't bad about your situation. Even if you're deeming it a failure, it's not bad. When people file bankruptcy, they might even have their idea for their next business that comes out of that bankruptcy. It's not all bad. So you have to filter it through the lens of positivity too. So the first thing we said was to decide that you do want to be made well and to know that it's work in order for that to happen. The second thing is look at your fika. What are you doing well? What things do you need to make sure that they're standards for the way that you're going to operate in this world? And consistency is one of mine. I know that my consistency is top notch. If I say I'm going to meet with you every Monday at 4 p.m., I'm meeting with you every Monday at 4 p.m. If I say I'm going to show up to do 5 videos that week, I'm going to show up to do 5 videos that week. My consistency is on point. I want to take that consistency into my next because I love the way that it works for me and I love the way that it works for the people that I'm working with. So what's your fika? What's the thing that really went well? What are those good things? And don't just write them down. Appreciate them about you because oftentimes we get into this space where we can point out all the negative things and we're really good at shooting ourselves down and we're really good at critiquing ourselves. But when you're doing self-assessment, it doesn't mean that you have to break yourself down. And I know that you're used to people in your life doing that for you. I know that you're used to having toxic people in your life tell you that you ain't, you know what, because you're not doing things the way that they think that you should do them. But don't do that to yourself. Change your internal narrative to say, listen, this right here, you should appreciate this about you. This right here, not in a prideful way, but in a I love who I am, is a moment to pat yourself on the back because you do this really well and you need to take this into your next. In fact, it's one of your gifts to be able to bring your purpose to fruition. So keep doing that thing. And then lastly, you have to, and I'm going to elaborate more on these for the rest of the week. So if you want to learn extensively about these 3 that I'm going to talk about next, tune in to YouTube for the short form video, to YouTube for the long form video, to the Fruitful Friday that's coming on Friday, as well as the blog that's coming on Wednesday on carrienicole.com, because I'm going to elaborate on these a little bit more. But you have to put things into inventory buckets, right? So you have to look at what's going in, what's coming out, and what just happened in the world around you, right? Just like you would in a retail store. What are the internal things, right? And we're going to talk about them extensively in the next video. But what are those internal things that you need to take inventory of? What parts of your mind, body, and soul do you need to take inventory of? Right? So think about processing internally. What's going on with me? Then the second one is externally. So you have to take inventory of what's going on in your circle. What's your influence look like? Who's in there that's not really supposed to be in there because every time you talk to them, it's draining you. So you have to take inventory of that too, because sometimes you might be doing everything in your power, but you got that one thorn in your side who makes you just want to break down and stop doing everything that you're doing. And that one thorn can 100% stop the process of your purpose from happening. So at the end of this year, 2023, you have to process, hey, let me look at my influence. Because if my influence isn't going to be able to go to my next, they got to get off the train right now because I'm ready for my next. And then you have to look at circumstantial. Look at the things that are in your control and out of your control. And again, we're going to go deeper into those things. Some things are just beyond your control. There's nothing you can do about them. Some things you want to control, but you can't, and you got to let go of them. And God is really driving. He's the conductor. Like, you can't do everything and you can't force everything because this isn't your journey. It was the journey that was created for you, yes, but you have to allow and align instead of forcing and pushing, because that's when you get yourself into the trouble of not doing things the way that they're supposed to be done. So I would encourage you to tune in to not just this podcast, but the rest of the videos this week so that you can end out your 2023 in the way that you should, looking at all of the things that you did well, all of the things that you plan on taking into the next year, and taking inventory of the things that might have put a barrier in your way, but that you're no longer willing to allow to be a hurdle in your process, because you want your wellness, you want to be well more than you want any of these other things. So thank you for tuning in. Remember, if you haven't already, purchase your copy for yourself or for someone else of Poems to Heal the Dead Things, so that you can help someone, or you yourself can go through the journey of healing with poems, lessons, and journal prompts to help you through that. Again, if you haven't already liked and subscribed to my YouTube channel, I would love for you to go there. I would love for you to comment on the videos and share with your friends so that more people can get the message. And if you're a podcast listener on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, we'd love for you to rate the show. And again, share with your friends, because there's nothing like having the gift of knowledge, but there's something better about sharing it with somebody that you know might need it. So thank you again for tuning in. Remember to look me up on all social media sites, and hopefully I will see you for the rest of the videos this week so that you can get deeper into those internal, external, and circumstantial inventories that we need to take at the end of this year.